Here I began with the scene called scene 3.hip. In this chapter, we will be working on the materials for our scene. Up until now, we were able to get translucent materials and indirect illumination working in our scene. But the last result we've got showed a little bit dark. So let me here say a few words about gamma. Depending on your output device, you should gamma correct your output to be able to see it correctly. Remember that if your render goes to compositing, then the output gamma from mantra should stay on 1. But your display should be set to the corresponding value of your output device, 1.8 in my case. You may also use a lookup table, but gamma correction is a good approximation. Let me now take a render of my scene. I'll just render using mantra 1. I'll get back when this render is done. Okay, on this bottom toolbar here, you can see this gamma correction field, so I'll just set it to 1.8. And you can directly see that my scene got a little bit brighter and I got a better result. So let me just make 1.8 the default gamma value for my M-Play. I'll hit D on my keyboard. You could also do that by going to Windows Display Options. And here under the Correction tab, I will set the default display gamma to 1.8 and I will save as defaults. I'll hit Accept, I'll close my M-Play, and then I will render again. And now you can see that I will directly get a 1.8 gamma here on the gamma field on the bottom of my render. I'm going to show you also how you can set it in your mantra node in case you needed that. So let me go to my out context, and here let me just maximize my network editor so you can see it. I will right click on my mantra 1 node, then I will go to edit parameter interface, and the edit parameter interface will pop up. I will go to the for rendering tab, and here in the filter field I will type gamma, then I will go to mantra 10, and under output you can see this gamma parameter here. I will right click on it and I'll click on install parameter. I'll hit accept, and then if I go to the parameters of my mantra node, I'll just go to the output tab here and I go a little bit down. Here you can see the gamma field appeared here, and now I will set it to 1.8 for example in my case, and I will render using mantra 1. Now I see the image is a little bit brighter than expected, but it's only normal because I have this 1.8 value here in the gamma field of my M-Play, so I'll just set it back to 1, and now I get the same result I got when I had 1.8 as the gamma correction value for my M-Play and 1 for my mantra. So I'll get back my gamma correction for my mantra to 1, and here I will leave it by default, so whenever I render I will get the correction only on my M-Play window. I'll get back when this render is done. Okay, now we've got a better visual feedback, so let me work on our translucent surface shaders. Let me tweak them and get them closer to what we need. You may have noticed in the final render that I have fine details on my two lamps. This is due to displacements, but I will leave that for later. Now let me just get the surface shaders right. The surface shader for my cylindrical light is simpler, so let me begin with that. In fact, it just needs some color tweaking. So let me just go to it. I'll go to my Ops context, I'll go inside my cylindrical light, and here I will go inside my cylindrical light material. And in this pop surface, I will just change this diffuse color to something more beige. So I will give it a 0.85 as red, 0.75 as green, and 0.5 as blue. That's it for this one. Now let me go to the surface shader of my square light. I'll go inside my square light, and here I'll go inside its material. Here it's a little bit trickier. Let me begin by giving the diffuse color a reddish color. I'll give it 1, 0.144, and 0.042. So this is the color I want to give to my diffuse color here. Then let me dive in. And here the trick I want to do to make my lamp look nicer is that I want the color of it to change with the light intensity that it receives. So I want it to be white where the light intensity is the highest. Then the more the intensity goes down, the color goes to a yellowish, then to a reddish, then at the end it hits a dark reddish color. Now to detect the intensity of the light on my surface, there's many ways. I'll use one which is more like a hack. In fact, I will detect the intensity of the output color of my lighting model and I will drive a ramp with it, which would be the equivalent of driving the ramp with the RMS or root mean square of my RGB components. But since the dominant color will be red, if you remember the color I put here, so the red color will be the dominant. So for simplicity, I will just use the red component to drive the ramp. Let me dive back in. To do that, I need 3 nodes. A vector to float node. Let me hit tab. I'll type vector and I'll choose vector to float. And a ramp node. I will hit tab again and I will type ramp and I'll create a ramp parameter. Then the last node I want to create is an add node. Let me hit tab and create an add node. So now I will connect the output of my add node to the CF input of my output node. Then I will just connect the output of my lighting model to the vector input of my vector to float, and I will take the red component and use it as the input of my ramp, and then I will take the output of my ramp and I will give it to the first input of my add node, and then I will take the output of my lighting model and I will add it to my ramp output before getting to the output node. So basically the setup is done. One more last thing I want to do before going up. I will just change the parameter label here. Let me call it something like square light ramp, and I'll just copy paste this here, and I'll call this also square light ramp. Now I will go up. Here we can see the ramp and the diffuse color, but if we go one more level up, we cannot see those diffuse and ramp. To be able to see them here, I will just right click on my node and I'll click on promote material parameters. And now I can see my ramp and my diffuse color on this level. Let me now define the colors for the ramp. I'll begin with this position here. Let me just close and play. And then I will change this color to something like, I'll take this here and I'll make it a dark red color. This would be okay. I'll close here. I will create another point, and for this one I will make the color a little bit more red. So I will take this to here, for example. I'll take the saturation up here, and then I will take the value all the way up. It's good for the second one, except that for its position I want it to be a little bit lower. So let me create a third point, and for this one I want its color to be more yellowish. So let me take the green value here to here, for example, and then let me take this a little bit up. Let me take the red value a little bit down, and that would be okay. So that's it for this color. I will take its position a little bit up, and I'll create the last point I need. I'll create it here, and then for this one I will take this a little bit higher, and then I'll take this a little bit down. Its position would be something like here, and that's it for my ramp. Okay, so now I'm done tweaking the surface shaders of my lamps. Let me take a render of my scene now to see what I've got. I'll get back when this render is done. Okay, you can begin to see some improvement. My scene is beginning to look nicer. Now my lamp surface shaders are done. As I said, later we will do displacement shaders for them. But next, let me move on to begin doing materials for other objects in my scene.